What's up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in this video we're going to be talking about a brief case study that I did comparing the core Scrapebox email grab check scraper versus the premium Scrapebox email scraping plugin. And we're going to compare this to a little bit of manual processing and Automator, and just really interesting little case study I did on an order that I had recently for dentists in the USA. Medical niches are notoriously low yield in my experience, and so I'm constantly, as I get these requests, and I feel that maybe it's time to do a new sweep of a particular medical niche. As my process improves, then I'm constantly looking for ways to expand on tough areas like dentists, for example. When I first did this, I got a yield of maybe like 4K, close to 5K perhaps, and it took a little bit of work to get that number up. And with my Bing scrape, which would be the better, let's see, in my archive, that was I probably did the Bing scrape to 2 or 3 tiers of depth in the past. And there's also Yellow Pages scrape, which probably had about, or not this one here. This one probably had about 4K, and this one maybe had like around 10K or something like that. And then, this was possibly unfiltered for like the dental keyword. So a little bit of mud in there. So you could probably say maybe around 8K, I would assume, totally topical dental emails. And I've had customers tell me that they've encountered guys in Facebook groups trying to sell dental leads for like 5K dental leads for like $300 or something, which is just crazy to me. But and I've heard a similar number from some other folks also about 5K, but I've been able to expand that up to, I want to say, about 18K. So with some methods I'm about to talk to you guys about now. In my recent scrape, I did Yahoo scrape. I did 2 different kinds of Yahoo scrapes from different parts of Scrapebox. And then I combined those results with my Bing scrape results of the past. And that may include Yellow Pages. I don't recall. I think the Yellow Pages were combined into the Bing scrape results possibly. But let's take a look at my server here, and we'll actually go through some of this stuff. So the first case study, let's take a look at, what's open here. Let's close this. What's this? Here we go. So in this sandbox folder, we've got 3 different little case study files. First one is the email scraper using the premium email scraping plugin. Let's take a look at that sample now. When we select the whole list, you'll see close to 5K that are both valid and uncertain. These have been verified using email verification process. So let's take a look at just purely valid emails. That would be 3,200 results. So that's not bad. Now that's the email scraper premium plugin. Keep in mind, I let this run all night and half the day. And hold on one second here. But I let that run all night and half the day, and that's a really long time. Now, the good thing about it is that it doesn't take up, that's under crawl loaded list. So it doesn't take up nearly as much system resources, but the problem is that it's really slow. So the benefit is basically you can do a lot more filtering here. So you can do any of the words on the page, any of the words in the URL, and then you can go into a certain depth, like a pretty wild depth actually. But this is something where you kind of gotta like set it, let it run for a week or a month, and just like let it sit there. And at the end of a long period of time, you could have a lot of contact information. Maybe, I don't know. In my experience, the deeper you go, it's diminishing returns in terms of the number of, it's diminishing returns in terms of like the processing time versus the results. Okay, so the deeper you go, it becomes much more cumbersome to process. And the number of results does not increase by a substantial quantity. I calculated it one time for like an example of mine, and it was something like 8 times for that one thing I did. I don't remember what it was, but it was something like 8 times longer to process, twice the result. So it's still, a certain quantifiable number of result, but it gets even more cumbersome the deeper you go. And part of the problem is because they don't have a feature for filtering the URLs. So, if you tell it to go a certain, and this is confusing too. It says source page, level 1, etc. They worded this very poorly. In SEO, you call the money site, that's like tier 0, right? You don't tier 0 or the money site, right? And then tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. And they've structured it kind of like that here, but it really shouldn't be that way. They should just call it level 1 and so on and so forth. It's a little bit confusing that they have it like this because level 1 is technically tier 2, because when you're handling like links from the money links in the case of scraping, when you're scraping for contact information, would be from your search engine. Those are where the ground zero are the links that you get from those would be the search engine pages. So it's a little bit weird to like deal with it in that regard, but basically you just have to realize that level 1 is technically tier 2 because you are likely going to want to insert, since you have to insert load your own URLs, whereas right here you have to load URLs into this section. You're likely going to scrape from Yahoo, right, or from your search engine, and then load them in here. So it's a little bit confusing how they've worded it back there. Anywho, but they don't have a feature in this region for doing the filtering on the URLs, which is a huge downside. Because as soon as they travel, like let's say they're on the source page that you've given them and they're scraping that data, that's no problem, I'm sure. But as soon as they travel to the next tier, guess what? It's going to jump by like 5 million URLs or something like that. And then they're just going to process those based on any of the words on the pages of those URLs, any of the words in the URL of those URLs. And so unless something is happening that I don't know about, where they do the URL scrutinization first and then they do the pages, like there's no option of it. There's no indication in terms of the PEMDAS, the order of operations for how they process, so how are you supposed to know? So that's a downside, because my guess would be that there's just this gigantic pile of next tier URLs, and then they're filtering based on that data, but then it's just like too much information. What it needs to be is you need to have a way to go filter for these URLs, scrub the rest, then scrape those URLs for keyword filters and do that process. Now, if it were set up that way, it would be way better. The problem is that the only other resource that gives you hope to be able to do that in an automated fashion would be the Automator, which is the king of the premium Scrapebox plugins. And this is not something I've talked about on my channel yet, but this is something I've been dealing with because the number of orders I've been getting in the last month has been so much higher. Like I cannot keep up with my orders. So I've had to start using Automator sequences. And this is basically an if this, then that. You can set these command sequences for running recipes. I'll share with you guys my tier 1 recipe, but please don't contact me asking me about it. I don't want to send my files, and I don't want to. I don't know what I'm going to do with all this yet, and so I am still improving on things. And but I will show you a picture of this. You can copy this if you want. So I've got a variety of tiers. My newest one are these two, And that's what I'm using in this particular case study I'm sharing with you. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to give you my original tier 1. So this will save you a lot of time. You can just look at this command sequence, screenshot it, pause the video, write it down somewhere. It's great. It works pretty well at tier 1. So you can see it's like 15 steps or something like that. And the main thing that you're doing with these sequences is you're cleaning and handling the URLs before you begin to scrape. And then once you get those URLs, you're checking to make sure that they're alive, they're legitimate, you're cleaning them up a little bit. And there's not even a keyword filtering section here, actually, which I do recommend. But the problem is that in the Automator, when you go to do remove URLs not containing, it's typed in. So it's not pull the keywords from a list, which is what it should be. And this is a problem, and I'll touch on this briefly. I don't want to talk about this a lot in this video, but this is a problem in terms of, Scrapebox support is not improving the software in ways that are practical and actionable for the average user. It kind of seems like they don't use their own software. And that's a whole other long story. I've exchanged, a variety of correspondence with support over the last, few years. Not really a whole lot over the last few years, but this last few months, especially, I've tried to get some support for some serious issues. And the response is basically just, it's your fault. Scrapebox is perfect. That's like the response every time. And so they're not open to constructive criticism. Like, not that I'm trying to criticize them, but they're not open to like people saying like, look, this is like a serious feature that Scrapebox is lacking. Like, who wants to go into an Automator file and add a different niche every single time? Like, it's a waste of time. It should be something to where it looks at a file, and then I can just like double click on this file and just change the word on the file. And then it always pulls from the same file every time. That's what this stuff is down here. If you guys maybe noticed just looking at the server, like, these are my workflow files. Like, these are some general keyword files. I got my proxies here. I got my cities here. Here's tier 1, and then tier 2 is like all through here. And so basically I just leave this stuff on my desktop, and then Scrapebox Automator pulls from this information, and it and I can always once I basically I can just put a keyword in this folder, into this file here, and then I can just run this job, run one of these Automator files, and then it goes through the list of like 15 different steps that I would normally do by hand, and then at the end of the road, I can just grab this list of emails. I don't remember what this one was for. Apparently it's 30,000. Oh, this was radio stations. 30,000 radio station emails. That was. So this one says dentist here, but then like, what I did with this dentist one is I just had it create, this one's URLs. So then I used those URLs and I applied them into the email scraper premium. So I actually had like a nice list of URLs that I curated with my custom method. And I loaded it into this program, but it ran super slow. And that's what gave us this result of roughly 5,000. So it's actually not the URLs, it's the way the program was running. And what I believe happened is it just didn't have enough time to run, because the way the filtering works, it takes too much time to process. So again, if you didn't catch what I said earlier, I think it's still really interesting and useful in terms of, you could let this run for a week or a month and then come back, and it would probably be a pretty amazing sample. So if you didn't want to like handle the data and get more from it in a shorter period of time, then this could be viable, and that might be more viable for some of you guys who just want to like have another little laptop in the corner or something, or like a refurbished PC that you buy from eBay that's running Scrapebox, and just let it just build really rich, specific niche rich lists. So that's kind of the use case here. But let's move on and let's take a look at the same URL sample, but scraped with the traditional grabber. And this was processed today in just a few hours. Probably not even that long, probably an hour. It's way faster. So if we take a look at this one, 12,000 lines. So uncertain and valid. So 5,000 to 12,000, 3K to 7.6K. So certainly twice the size of valid emails from running it with the traditional grabber. So don't let Scrapebox support tell you that the email scraper premium plugin is so much better. It's just at least in terms of crawling the list, it is not better. It is typically worse, right? Now, once again, if you were going to let it just run for ages, maybe it could slowly get to that point. But based on the current data, it would literally take 2 days of this running just to get to the point that I was able to get to in like an hour. So you got to think about like, okay, like if it's a little bit more manual handling for me to go deeper, why not? And really, that's just in terms of the same URLs, but different strategies in terms of harvesting. Like if you did a better job with your URLs and you like pulled niche specific URLs, like from or niche specific directory URLs, for example, then you could still just get them just as quickly. You see what I'm saying? So instead of letting this thing churn along like a turtle, and maybe after a really long time it gets there, you could just do a better job at getting the initial URLs, and then you're gonna get a much bigger sample much more quickly anyway. So how lazy are we? You know, like is the kind of trade-off. Like, not to be rude about that, but you know what's I'm kind of trying to give it credit where credit is due. Like there is a use case, but it's just not a very good use case. So anyways, I did not, well, before I get to all this other stuff, I'll kind of touch on this other stuff, but let's take a look at the last sample, and then you can kind of get an idea here. So of the fullness of this case study. So this one is Bing, and this one was done in a couple of manual sweeps with an older method. And this one was 25,000 total URLs with 13,000 completely valid. So that's twice as much as the previous one. It's almost like twice as much as the first one and twice as much as the second one. Like it's kind of unusual how it's almost progressive there. But what you're not seeing is actually each list is different in terms of their keyword filtering. These two have both been filtered for the word dent so that we make sure that they're for sure dentists. When scraping from search engines, you always get some drift, some unrelated things coming in. And it's not always easy to do that on each niche. Like in real estate, for example, you can't really do that because most of the real estate rankings are people's names. They're realtors. And so that's much harder to do with certain niches. But in this case, it's fairly easy. We just use the word dent. So if we were to look at, now what I'm trying to say is with my Bing scrape, I probably did not scrutinize by the word dent. And so it probably has some mud in there. Let's look for the word dent here and count. So that's 9,300 matches, and you'll keep them. It's more than the whole, number of lines, but that's probably because it's like email URL, and there's some duplicates there, right? So it's fine because they all are going to be that way. 9,300 on the first list, 1,700 or 17,000 on the second list. So that's almost twice as much, and 12,000 on the third list. And that was actually about the number of valid emails, which is interesting. So actually, based on those those numbers, the second list, which was these URLs, right, scraped with the general grab checking mechanism, yielded the largest quantity in, also correlated with the most relevant keywords. So pretty cool little case study just for me to determine, okay, which utility and methodology gives the best yield. Number one, the best overall yield. Number two, that is the most topical. And number three, that doesn't take as much of my time. So obviously the automator sequence with the regular grabber is king. And that's what I recommend. So that tier 1 model that I showed you guys, if you can make your own little model with my patterns and things, and using the automator, I think the automator costs like $20 from their premium plugins. That's what I recommend to you guys if you really want to start scraping emails more quickly and to get a pretty good yield for your time. I do recommend the automator with the regular grabber, the grabber that's included in the automator. Let's talk a little bit more though. So that concludes my case study in terms of the 3 methods and talking about the email scraper premium plugins general crawling capability. This would be the most equivalent form of the general crawling capability. Now, there are other features. I have not fully tested all these. A disclaimer, okay? So I don't want you to get the idea that I'm like a master of the premium email scraper plugin. That's not the case. I was just trying to, do this equivalency case study to figure out, what was going to get me the best overall yield. So I have not tested fully the search by keywords. So basically, what this does is it's going to be similar to what the harvester will do. Obviously, you can see part of the harvester here, but then it will immediately go into the tier 1 scraping. So you could argue that this right here is going to be similar to a tier 1 scrape process like the one that I just gave you from the automator. However, it doesn't contain, part of my automator sequence is a lot of data handling. You can see we load up the proxy, we load up the right kind of proxies to be able to scrape the URLs, right? And you probably can't even do that here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think you can do that. You can't go one proxy and then another type of proxy. So I don't even think that this would work at all with my method where I scrape the URLs with proxy.com and then I scrape the emails with WebShare. So that's a bummer because this stuff is useful, but it looks like the same engine. Oh, wow. Number of results to process. Oh, so you can increase it here at this level. Huh. That's cool. You can do that over here, but what you may not realize is that under what limits you is actually the harvester engine configuration, because it goes page start 1 to 20. So you can only go up to 200 results. And I think that's because Yahoo only goes up to 200 results, but it'd be interesting to learn if it could go deeper. Anywho, so yeah, I don't think this one could be used actually because of the proxy issue. But anyways, it basically would just take that. You would still have to construct the URLs. And that's one of the cool things about this process with the automator is that actually, once I put a keyword in the folder, it automatically grabs the location and mashes them together, and then it harvests, then it cleans the list, and then it removes it with crappy extensions, and then it saves the file, and then it loads the scraping proxies, and then it checks for these live checks 200, 301, 302, and then it goes and it grabs the emails. So, and this is just something I created a second ago. But so it's much cleaner in terms of handling the data and doing it all in one fell swoop. With my old tier 1 Automator file somewhere. It's like over here behind this stuff. So anyways, those are my thoughts on that one. I have not fully tested it yet, but now you can get where I'm coming from. Extract from local files. So this is probably really similar to this feature, grab check, grab emails from local list. I used to use this feature because I used to be a fan of just let's do the scrape and then let's grab it from the autosave file, and then I'll have just the naked emails there, and that's easier to handle. But a lot of customers want the URL alongside the email, and it also makes it easier to filter by the keyword topically, because the URL will have a keyword in the domain or in the trailing slash of the slug. So, or the trailing slash and the slug after the trailing slash of the domain. So, I use the emails now. The problem with this feature, I use the URLs now more frequently, but the problem with this feature is that it's not always accurate. So it looks for what I would assume is a regex pattern, but the problem is that it's email, delimiter, URL. So for some reason, when the email is like in one string like that, it doesn't do a very good job of plucking it out. Now, if you had like a gigantic file of like gigs and gigs and gigs of text that was just like scraped from some crazy place where you couldn't possibly organize it by just cutting away a delimiter, then I could see a use case for this. But since the data is organized, it's not a good idea to grab, because I've actually tested it and it actually destroys a part of the list when you use this feature. So I don't recommend it. I have not tested this and tested that and compared the results to see if it does the same, commits the same transgression. But I assume that it's the same thing and you're probably going to have a similar problem. So just a disclaimer there. This also has a filter too, so that's even better, really. Oh, and this goes up to 1,000. So a lot of the root functionality will sometimes go up to a maximum of 500. Like most of the connections in the general region here go up to 500. See, some of them go to 200, but mostly 500. And then if you do advanced settings, then the harvester and the proxy manager can go up to much higher levels. But mostly it's 500 and then a little bit of 200. And over here, some things will go up to 500 threads and connections. A number of things only go up to 200. But some of the premium plugins like the Automator and the email scraper, they actually have features to go up to 1,000, which is really, really cool. I mean, you have to be careful not to do it so high that your server crashes or gets, way too overloaded. But if you had an i7 probably or higher, then you could probably go a bit beyond 500 and it depends on the function. Like sometimes I'm running at 500 and it'll only be like 50% of CPU, but then and that's a case where I could maybe go up to 1,000 possibly, or 800 or something. So that's pretty awesome, something to test. And this is great too. So I don't know, we'll have to see. Extract email extract from email account. So I'm not really sure the use case here. I guess if you had something where you were doing in collection of information, or put some email out there for people to contact for some purpose, for lead gen or something, and you had some sort of like Yandex email account, then maybe you could connect this to that server and then just pull it all out. I don't know, like I don't have a use case for this, so I would probably not test this ever, really, or at least for a while. Now the email verifier, I have told some customers that I've tested it and it's trash, and that's true. I did test this and it appeared to be trash. Problem is, I may have made a mistake. So when I tested this, it appeared to have really crummy results compared to some other things that I use. But I recently looked at the options and I noticed there is an SMTP section, and it doesn't appear to be filled out unless I did it on another instance. Then I didn't fill this out, which means that I must not have noticed it for some reason. And so you can see format and MX lookup, and then there's sender, and it appears to be an SMTP testing functionality, which suggests that it could be very similar to some of the better uh, email verification solutions. So there's a video I've done on email verification. If you want to look at that, then please do a search on my YouTube channel. Please don't comment or ask me just do a search on the YouTube channel, or look at the Scrapebox playlist, or I probably have an email marketing playlist. Look at that too. There's a test that I did where I talk about software a bit. And I'm hoping to make my own solution that I can maybe I'll hand that out for free, or I don't know. Like I'm making money now on email verification, so I might just want to use that for my own internal purposes. I'll think about it. We'll get back to that some other time. But anyways, I need to test this, is what I'm saying. So this could be good. This could be good. This could be pretty good, and it doesn't it's not a recurring cost like the other tools. So to be continued on this. This is going to probably be my next video, because this could save me some money. Anyways, so next one, we got the custom crawler. Now this is a monster. Okay, you could probably purchase this plugin for $40 or however much it costs just for this one right here. Now I have not done any testing in terms of on a full range of URLs. Okay, so disclaimer, I'm just giving you the information based on concept for this part of the plugin. I have not tested this. Okay, so just a disclaimer, I'm not trying to be disingenuous here. But based on the way it works, I can explain that it's based on understanding the interface here. This is basically a combination of the custom data grabber and well, not really a combination. It is the custom data grabber in appearance. It's a combination. It's a combination of the custom data grabber and then the just general email grabber. Basically, you can create columns, so you can create your own internal spreadsheet of information. So you can do an email column, and you can see, all right, I did test. Here's one field, test 1, test 2. And then if we did a third one, test 3, I could go add as new field, and boom, it adds another column. And basically, you can go information before this area or after this area, and this is what this looks like. So let's use the custom grabber, and I'll show you what this looks like. It's the exact same in this region here. So when you go to the custom grabber, you can set it up however you saw there. And then when you're in here to configure masks, you can make a new mask, and there's a section for regex to extract, and there's this formatting where you can go anything before or after, like boom or boom. So once you have this formula, this is the formula, then you can go, okay, I want something that is before this value, and you can see the delimiter is the piping symbol. So I want, in this case, I said, I want everything. I want you to find this information before the value that I'm looking for, right? And then I put the piping symbol, and then I want you to find this information after the value that I'm looking for. And the purpose of this footprint was to find the Goodreads ratings for a particular author. So that was the purpose of this little footprint here. And so basically you can do the same thing on, it's really, it's really for directories. You can't do it to business websites because the data is wild. It's different on every website. But if you were to say go to house.com or Zillow.com or TripAdvisor or some such place where it's a directory and it has like the name, the reviews, the city, the state, the zip code, the phone number, then you can create your own custom column structure with all that data. And so that's basically what's going on here. You can extract the email. You can create your own custom spreadsheet, which is a huge request that I get in my gigs, my orders, and it's something I mostly have to say I don't really do that. I can do a little bit of that with Yellow Pages because the premium plugin here, Yellow Pages Scraper, basically does this, and this runs pretty quickly. Although it is quite glitchy, I will tell you this plugin is quite glitchy, but it gets a lot of data and it's formatted and it works well. And with big niches, it's really, really fruitful. And it's more RAM intensive than it is CPU intensive. So you can run a couple of these instances, no problem, or a few really. You can run a few, but I really usually like to run no more than a couple so I can, run other things on the server at the same time. Now I don't know how the resources are handled here though. So it would be amazing if it were similar. The problem is you have to load your own URL list. So it's not like Yellow Pages. They're going to go and search with a custom harvester configuration or Yahoo that has a custom harvester configuration that's already out there. You have to, and you can see custom, there's like a user agent string and there's some filtering stuff that you can do. And there's even some tiers you can do, which kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Can't do a whole lot of threads here, which is dumb. But the angle is the URLs. So you have to go to a directory and you have to be able to find those URLs. There's a few ways to do that. I probably shouldn't go into too much detail, but basically you can go to grab links by crawling a site. And so sometimes you can do a sitemap like this, or sometimes people will do a sitemap on page, not in a typical XML file. And so when they do that, then you can just use the grab links by crawling a page, and you can go into a variety of tiers that you have determined is deep enough to hit a lot of data for whatever your directory you're trying to scrape, right? And this is for the purpose of getting the URLs. You could also technically do the link extractor add-on, and depending on how deep it was, you could then go, and do that. Technically speaking, in a similar fashion, I guess you could do depth here at this level. So then it's looking for data on those pages. So that's not quite, it's kind of not lazy, but that's kind of a weak way of doing it. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Another thing you could do is scrape the sitemap with the sitemap scraper. So if you're able to locate a website's sitemap, then you could do the sitemap scraper. Here's an example. Well, this is not an example, but let's take Goodreads as an example, because I did this recently. Oftentimes when you go to directory, a good place to start is looking at their footer. Sometimes they'll have their sitemap in their footer, and that makes it really easy. Sometimes you can do a Google search. You can just go, Goodreads sitemap, and sometimes people don't, no index their sitemap, and then you can just grab it from the ranking. Sometimes you can literally just guess it by going /sitemap.xml, which is the most common, way of structuring the sitemap on the average website. When that fails, when all those other ones fail, one that really frequently works is looking at the robots text file. Even the ones that try to block the other ones, they'll go robots.txt, and then they'll have a bunch of instructions for search engine, and somewhere in there, and in this case at the bottom, you'll see a whole list of their sitemaps. So this is a case where I was able to just grab their sitemap here and scrape like 5 million author pages. And that was super useful. So the sitemap is really fast to scrape. So if you can get a sitemap, then an XML file, then you can use the add-on for the sitemap scraper, and that thing can grab those URLs from the sitemap really, really fast. So that's like the ideal way to do it. Now there's one last method in this madness. You can follow links. You can grab from an on-page listing of categories. You can grab from a sitemap. There's one last thing you can do. That's from URL generation. So in some cases, like with this directory, this is a job I'm working on right now for ukcampsite.co.uk. You can. This is a case where I could not scrape the internal links. It just wouldn't work properly because on the directory pages for these campsites and parks, they have visit their website, and when you hover over that, see, as you can see down here, it shows redirect link. Some like house.com does the same thing. They cloak all of their directory links in redirects. And for some reason, it could be that these are .asp links, but for some reason, the link extractor could not visibly see these links on these pages. And I could not, even though the robots text file was available for this website, and they had like dozens of bots and scrapers that they were trying to block, but they can't block Scrapebox. They can't block my proxies. But they didn't feature their sitemap, so I was not able to scrape from the on-page. There was no on-page. There was an on-page categorization. You can see the breadcrumbs here, but once I got to the bottom of the barrel, it wasn't scraping the external links for some reason. Okay, and so the on-page didn't work. There was no sitemap that I could find. The traveling down the traveling through tiers didn't work for on-page scraping. There's only one thing left to do. That's to look at the URL structuring. And so up here, you'll notice this is a directory which had numbers for each of the listings. And when you look at the redirect links, they had the same exact numbers, except they had the taxonomy for the external link cloaking they did. So all I had to do was grab one single link and then just artificially create a bunch of numbers on the end of that link. And that's where a tool like this can come in handy. Typically, you could use a keyword multiplier, and there are other tools online where you can create, pagination variations and things like that. This is an example where you could kind of, I believe, now I haven't used it specifically like this, but I believe that you could just go, like you see this, the curly brackets, you could just go, okay, I'm going to put my link in here, and then I'm going to add curly brackets for like a number or a keyword or something like. So you could go start at page 1, number of pages, 20,000, increment pages by 1. So, or 2,000. So this should logically create, let's see. Let's try it. Or is that keywords? Okay, so let's try this. Hopefully it will work. Let me see. I have to put the let's see, page num. See, num page num number of pages, increment of pages, num 1 to 2,000. Let's try that. So, oops. Sorry, I'm actually not experienced with this because I've been doing it other ways for a really long time. So this should work. Yeah, so you see this here, and it just numbered these. So this is actually a really useful tool. This right here needs to be a standalone premium plugin, or it needs to be included in the general add-ons. It's kind of silly that it's dropped it right into the this region. this right here is to me more useful than some of this other stuff that they've included because it allows you an incredible amount of flexibility. So I was able to just take this in this recent case study, right? Not case study, in this recent example of this job that I'm doing right now. And I was able to create, not this one, I was able to create just all these permutations of the actual redirect links. And then typically I would normally use the add-on for redirect, redirect check. And that would usually allow you to follow the redirects and get the normal pages. But that didn't work for some reason. Scrapebox tripping recently. I don't know what's going on there. But that did not work. And so I had to use the link extractor, and that did work. Now, you can actually scrape emails from redirect links. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I wanted to get the raw URL so that I could present them to the customer and just have those, get those confirmed rather than just, trying to figure out, because like basically when I tried to do a live check on these, it wouldn't travel through. It just checked like that it was a legitimate, thing from like, it was really checking this site. It wasn't going through. So you can't do a live check on those. And I did a number from 1 to like 50,000. So just so I didn't have to figure out exactly how many there were, I just went to a number I knew was like way beyond. And anyways, so the link extractor did allow me to get these URLs, and it was like about 8,800 URLs in this particular directory for campsites and parks. So yeah, this facet of the tool is killer. Really big fan of this facet. So let's anyways, point being, you can use this in conjunction. You can use this, and if you're scraping from a particular directory and you have a pattern, then you can load the URLs here. But you have to have some sort of pattern wherein this can travel. And that's kind of like a nuisance too, because, well, you can still use this somehow, or maybe just like handle the URL process over here in the general region. And then you can load the exact destinations of those directory pages. And then that's a point where you can then create your own spreadsheet. Now, the unknown here is, how long does it take? So to be continued on how long this takes. I don't know. So this could be really awesome for creating really thorough and really detailed directory specific contact information. But for now, I'm going to stick with URL and email from the main region here because it's way faster. It's way easier. And then maybe in time, I'll start investigating this and look at some really big directories like House or some of the other fancy directories that are huge, and maybe see, is there, the possibility of me creating some really in-depth information, such as with Goodreads, for example. The problem is 100 threads, like that's so weak. But I get why it is. It's probably because when you're processing so many different columns, like it's probably a lot more taxing. So we'll have to see. I'll get back to you guys on this. It's very promising though for some things that where people need multiple points of data. So one last thing, the email filter. Have not really used this, but based on what I'm seeing here, you load your emails up. You can remove duplicate emails, keep one email per domain, keep emails containing this, remove emails containing that, keep emails where the username contains such and such. That's cool. Remove. Sometimes I get customers who don't want generics like info or admin and stuff like that. So I guess that I don't really need to do the filtering though, because the customer can do the filter. They can just do a drop down in Excel and just uncheck info. So, or I don't know. Anyways, remove emails where username contains, keep emails where domain name contains, can remove where this domain contains. So The sneaky thing about this is the best feature is not necessarily the generics here. The best feature is the fact that it's a box. Because in the general remove filter area, remove URLs not containing, or remove URLs containing, like, let's see, remove URLs containing or not containing. Like, this is like one of the top features that I use on a regular basis. And the mask is just one line. So you cannot remove, excuse me, this or 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 this. You know, it's like it's a drag. Like this, these general regions, I've talked to Scrapebox a couple of times, and I said these need to be improved and expanded on. This is the most important thing. I don't get why are you guys not improving the core of Scrapebox? Like, so this having the ability to go multiple lines, that is the secret of this utility, and it might be a reason I start using it. We'll have to see. Like, if I can put URLs in here and not just emails, then that would make it even juicier. So as I continue to dig into this premium plugin, I'll let you guys know. I appreciate you watching. Covered a lot of information in this video. I'm sorry it went on so long, guys, but I do appreciate your time and your support. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you got value from this. And the overall takeaway is just that, you know, hey, the Automator is going to give you a good result. The general email scraper is going to give you a good result really quickly. And the email scraper premium plugin does have some benefits, but it's nothing like, unless you're a serial user like I am, and I'm you know, you're using it every day constantly. It's nothing that you need to be like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out. I really got to get the premium email scraper plugin. You know, like, let me encourage you. Like, if you just have the core of Scrapebox, like it's enough for you to do a lot of good. And if you want to spend $20 and get the Automator, then you can set up a sequence where you can just like run that thing with, you can put a keyword, run it, and then, you know, it's autopilot. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.